We'll give folks 1 or 2 minutes more to keep trickling, and then we'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Thank you for joining. Welcome, everyone. We can go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining our February Health AI Hub. Health AI Hub collaboratory rounds bring together experts and practitioners to share and explore various aspects of AI lifecycle management in healthcare. These monthly gatherings are designed to keep you informed about the latest trends, best practices, and challenges in the ever-evolving field of healthcare AI. So we are really excited to welcome Corinne Strom from the SCAN group today. I have just a couple of quick reminders before we get started, and then I will pass it over to her. So we have one more event coming up this month. It's actually next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. You can register by either scanning the QR code or visiting duke.is/AI in action. But our AI in Action series features learnings from the safety net, including real world use cases and lessons learned related to governance and other emerging topics specific to AI use in the safety net. So we are excited to host a panel at the University of Mississippi Medical Center and Copiah County Medical Center about a virtual AI-powered nursing program. So we encourage you to join us for that if you are available. The recording will also be posted to our website after the event. And I am excited to welcome Corinne Stam from the SCAN Group. She is the head of emerging technology and is here to present to us today about hidden essentials for AI success. So I will hand it over to you, Corinne. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much. Allow me a moment. The logistics will get interesting for me today, but I believe it looks good now. Good afternoon. I am Corinne Strom. I lead the emerging technologies team at SCAN, and I want to give you an idea of the things that we've learned in the nearly 3 years that we've been running our program. Today, I'll focus quite a bit on generative AI, but I would love to share with you things that apply more broadly than that. As we go, feel free to drop questions in the chat. I try to be as multi-threaded as possible. So as long as I can see the chat, which I'm trying to do on a single monitor today, I will try and keep up with any questions that you have. So first question is likely to be number one. Who am I? Why am I speaking on this particular topic? So I am Corinne Strom. I work for SCAN, and I'll give you a quick overview of what that is in a moment. We are a nearly 50-year-old nonprofit, and we represent all senior care interests. It's a variety or a diversified set of healthcare endeavors. You may know us as our Medicare Advantage plan, which crosses multiple states and serves nearly 500,000 seniors. But we also are participating in-home and hybrid primary care initiatives. We see seniors where they are, if they're in the streets, in their homes, in institutional settings, and more notably, we also run a program for all-inclusive care of the elderly, or a PACE program called My Place. All of this is to say that with nearly 50 years having served seniors and being founded by senior care activists, this is our primary and sole focus. So what is our group inside of SCAN? I am part of Emerging Technologies. We are, again, about 3 years old, if you can believe it. when we saw the emergence of GPT, we saw this incredible opportunity to do more for our seniors and to do more with technology at the foundation of that. We started as an educational team and grew into topics of AI governance, which will be our first theme for today, as well as the buy and build of AI containing technology and solutions. So let's jump right in. My goal here today is to give you 3 years of lessons learned so that you don't have to do the same. And normally when you attend any sort of AI in healthcare presentation, someone's going to throw a slide at you to kick you off with like some great metric where they interviewed a bunch of chief information officers and like 80% of them believe that AI is going to disrupt everything. It could be a Gartner hype curve. It could be some buzzworthy quote. But I think the reality is that organizations don't need hype anymore. They need guidance. They need tools that will help them in their journey of adoption. And that's what I want to share with you. Our program was really grown from the ground up. We were focused on employee education. We were deliberately building out governance and skills of our workforce. We didn't just run headfirst into a bunch of pilots and technology purchases. So I was really excited that one of the early questions that came in ahead of this session was, how will the safety net tackle AI? One thing I want to dismiss is that you're going to need to have a bunch of new AI experts that you will be hiring. Don't think that you have to go out and acquire a bunch of new talent. My team, I like to joke, is actually like a banding together of superheroes who were inside of the organization, passionate for what they do. And I think that's best represented by our AI governance team and organization. So most of what we had here was already in-house. They know their work and they are the subject matter experts on it. When you form an AI governance program, which is really the start of any good AI investment inside your enterprise, look at the people who now need to scrutinize AI through their lens. These would be your partners in legal. They're managing contracts, relationship with new technology vendors. They're also a tremendous partner in finding legal exposure and risk, which I learned about through the Health AI partnerships, prior sessions on legal red teaming. You have partners in risk compliance and security. They're on the lookout for new surface areas or compliance exposure and security threats. So someone had asked ahead of this session about the changing role of healthcare compliance, and this is one example. Your partners in compliance are running independent audits of your AI programs and vendors. This ensures that everyone is doing their diligence in buying or building of AI solutions. Your HR organization is an incredible asset in AI adoption as well as AI governance. They're helping to educate and set expectations in roles regarding data and digital literacy, and they're upskilling teams to incorporate AI into their everyday processes. AI adoption and governance of AI are often about working with what you have. You have SMEs who will become your AI product owners, and they will also become your people and process knowledge leaders. So, okay, you're starting to band everyone together. You're starting to get them excited. Let's move beyond the hype. What you need to now do is build out your backlog, your roadmap. And so this is a form that we started with that I share out often. What you do is create this placemat, the way that you conceptualize your organization. Look at both your technology maturity and look at your potential for impact, because those two together will inform how you build your backlog. And I actually love this part of the AI practice because it can be very therapeutic. You often start engaging these teams with questions like, what do you hate about your work? If you were to start over, how might you redesign your responsibilities and commitments to the organization? When I ask this, most of my colleagues at SCAN will look back to the member or their patient, depending on their relationship, and they want to reduce the time that they're spending on administrative overhead. They want to eliminate friction. They want to reclaim and spend more time with these seniors. So at this phase, when you're going through your conversations with your stakeholders, you're not solving. You're just listening, you're workshopping, and you're envisioning. Try not to scope in what you could be doing with technology and merely think about what could be your new way of working. So now that you've started to build out this backlog, this view, and again, what I've shown here is a sample, maybe through the lens of a health plan, but every organization is built a little bit differently. Now you want to think about other ways that you might solve problems. And I will emphasize this point multiple times today. AI is not your only way to address your needs or solve your problems. It can be a sufficient, but not even necessary contributor to your transformation. So I want you to look at other ways you might transform. Think about your workforce itself. Many people will say that healthcare's adoption of AI is outpacing any other industry, but that means that your workforce needs to reflect that. So are you ensuring that you are hiring with technology literacy in mind? Use HR as your partner, because you can also cross-train your employees. Again, because you don't need AI experts, you need experts on how this work is supposed to happen. The people who understand our highly regulated and frankly fragile industry. You can cross-train your employees in partnership with learning and development. And this doesn't have to be expensive. This can actually be careful curation of tool agnostic training that you're finding online. Look for the basics of prompting or agentic workflows. Now let's look a second to our processes, because we're going to cover this a few times today. Look for work that is highly manual. Look for work that is feeling robotic. If or when this happens, that needs to happen. That type of work is very eligible for process redesign. So again, tap your subject matter experts who are often going to be thrilled for the opportunity to disrupt these processes. Those processes often cause them nothing but grief. They know where the rough edges are, and they know what can cause problems for the solutions that may replace today's operating model. Lastly, healthcare does play a game of high-low, which I find to be really interesting. By way of an example, I am representing a nearly 50-year-old nonprofit, and we work with cutting-edge technology, but we also still have a heavy dependency on paper. Outdated technology is right now a reality of what we do in healthcare, but it's also a huge opportunity for change. AI has been really committed to software development and monitoring, so there's never been a better time to buy or build what you need. One cautionary tale that I want to keep on your radar for this, though, is try not to get locked into long contracts. Costs are going to continue to decrease, so don't sign anything longer than a year if you can avoid that. You will be in a strong position to renegotiate next year. So the first third of my content today was really about setting up your program for success. Let's talk about what execution might look like. And in particular, for this time, I will be focusing on mistakes that my own team has made and lessons that we have learned from that, because I want you to learn from the same and avoid making these mistakes. So let's start with one program that we were actually very proud of. And I will pause to ask you your feedback on this once I set up the stage for the problem. So early on, as a development team, when we started to build, we were brought this opportunity and we were so excited about it. We were told that our case management team was processing a lot of papers manually. So the way this works is that documents come in, mailed letters. These are health risk assessments. They look like forms. So they will ask you about whether your activities of daily living have been problematic for you in the last few weeks or few months. They will ask you how you rate your overall health and well-being. And so we mail out a lot of these for members on both special needs plans that are for chronic conditions or for dual Medicare, Medicaid enrollees. We mail these out to the members. They mail them back. We get them through something called the digital mailroom. Now, the digital mailroom creates a PDF of these assessments, and then it drops them into a work queue. And this was accounting for a couple thousand of these monthly. And that was before we grew our membership by a third. So our staff was opening this up on one monitor, bringing up the case management tool on the other, and they were typing in the responses to these forms. And so when this opportunity came to us, we were thrilled because we wanted to give the case managers time back with the seniors. We wanted them to start doing the work that gets triggered by these health risk assessments and not doing the data entry. And so we actually hooked up a solution and it went live. It actually is going live now. And there's a couple others in the same space where we started with paperwork that got mailed in. And now we're in the process of automating the ingestion. So we hooked up some basic generative AI. You can use an Omni model. You can use optical character recognition. And you can then, we are taking a picture of it and asking what was on the form. And then we automatically push it into the downstream system. And so I felt really good about this, but I have to ask, it's flawed. Can you answer in the chat or just unmute? Why is there something flawed about this solution? It does write back to the source system. Ellen, great feedback. So for us, it's a case management system. Anu asks the question or raises the concern that it might copy it as is without validation. And this is an interesting problem for your AI team. Depending on how you distribute the work, the responsibility of validation or, hey, did they select 2 boxes when they could have selected 1? That's oftentimes something we leave up to the business team to decide how to enforce. We'll do that. Hey, we'll get the content for you. We'll give you a level of confidence as to which boxes were checked, which radio, things were sort of filled out. Any other thoughts?
Yes. From what I understand, seniors are filling out physical forms and the AI is taking pictures. Does it take into account like the handwriting or effects of the aging of seniors and what they may meant to check, but is it overflowing in the other check boxes and things like that?
Good question. So this is where you get into an interesting challenge around the difference between optical character recognition, which is really great for forms, and more of like an Omni model, which starts to do more enforcement like, hey, in this box, I expected letters, but I got numbers. How is that a problem? These are all really good technology questions, but the answer is not a technology answer. So the OCR recognition on a form, and this is a great topic for all things paperwork. So healthcare has sort of 2 styles of document, and this is the way that you think about it for OCR. There's sort of I have a fixed question and therefore I will enclose your response. So think about when you fill out, well, no one does tax paperwork physically anymore, but when there's only 3 checkboxes, and so it's a template. Those tend to be very good for OCR, but if you do spill over, it will try and pick up those extra characters and work with them. Whereas there's also a version of optical character recognition that will just get whatever it can, because this might be a chart. A chart is somewhat templatized, but what I get from one facility is going to look very different from what I get from another facility. And I think we're starting to get at the core of this in the chat, which I think are really interesting, which is, well, how are their technical skills? One assumption that we made in this process right now is that they only want to fill these forms out via paper. And that is actually the flaw. The flaw is that when we charged into this problem, we were excited because we were like, yes, there's a technology solution to this problem. But someone actually raised in this particular problem space, does anyone else feel uneasy about the fact that that's our letterhead? We're trying to digitize a piece of paper that we ourselves sent out. So we created the problem for ourselves that we are now years later being asked to solve. So the problem is this: we have to redesign this as a process. We can't just put AI on because we were automating the problem. That means that we weren't really solving this paperwork issue. We were actually kind of bandaging it and kind of trying to put it on autopilot. So this program is actually 2 separate legs. My team contributed automation and AI, but the real disruption here was asking why we were even dealing with paper that was being mailed back to us. That's the problem. And so disruption in the space of healthcare often occurs when you're asking why you're doing something a specific way. It's sort of leaning into those people, process, technology solutions that we talked about on the last slide. It's saying, hey, you brought me this problem, digitize these papers. And it's saying, I hate papers. Why are we using papers? So the way this problem is solved in sort of the larger program is that, yes, of course, we're going to automate ingestion of the papers. That's sort of non-negotiable. We're drowning in these documents. But it's also sliding in this extra work stream that says, what if we explored being a little bit more digital native as well? And to be very clear, we won't get rid of the papers at all. We're just offering alternate methods. We'd always done telephonic health risk assessments, but now we are exploring the idea that maybe small text-based options are available, maybe microsites, maybe filling this out in the member portal could be palatable as well. And so for our world, there was a very long assumption or a long broken mindset that seniors wouldn't use the technology. And I'll follow up on the question that Anu asked in the chat earlier. Yes, we are also exploring voice responses as well. This is now a time where we can be as multimodal as possible. So these are such solid conversations happening in the chat. But again, the drive home point here is don't just solve the problem as it is served to you. Pick it apart and ask what assumptions led you to this state in the first place. Because now what happens is we did free up our team and they will go repurpose the time that they were spending on these papers with our members, with our seniors, but they are also part of this larger, hey, are we promoting member independence? Or are we delaying the reaction to their HRAs when we put them behind this paper-based process? And this is one of easily a dozen similar processes that are occurring right now within our organization, and we are trying to overcome them. All right, I want to move you to another example. I like this section, burn to learn. So this is sort of that takeaway. Don't also think about just reloading your team with additional work. Think about now recruiting them to the cause of disruption. This has been my rallying cry for the last few months, that I might eliminate some time in the work that you are currently doing. I need you to now take that time, and I need you to envision better with me. I need you to workshop with me. I need you to talk about the things that you hate. For a lot of people in healthcare right now, they don't have the mind space to even think about that because they are drowning. We are overwhelmed by the amount of work that we have to do. And this is how we buy ourselves the space, the time, and the mental clarity to even think about this. So I want to work through another example. Okay, this one I think is really interesting. And I've shared this before. So we once were working on summarization because we have charts that we get after an inpatient hospitalization. We get concurrent review documents for home health and skilled nursing visits. And so we were being, again, overwhelmed by material. We'd get these charts and they could be dozens to hundreds of pages. And so the way this worked today is we had staff members, they'd go out to health information exchanges, they'd go to facility-specific portals, and they would pull these charts down, or these charts would arrive via fax or email. And we wanted to streamline chart reviews. And we started to ask the AI, can you do the task that our staff is doing? But then we'd panic because we'd get these results that look like what you see here. There is material that I've highlighted in green on the left that the machine generated. It might highlight specific attributes of the visit. And then you have the material that is running and being generated on the right by the human. So with this project, we do a few round scenarios with our case managers. We'd give them the chart, we'd have them do their work, we'd observe, they'd talk their way through what they were doing, and then they would generate the output. So then we'd ask the AI, can you do the same thing for us? And we'd find that there would be these conflicts. So things in red were not generated by the human, but they were generated by the AI. And we panicked during our side-by-side testing because in earlier versions of the model, we would ask, is this a hallucination? Now, Hallucination is a bias towards responding. This is actually an artifact of how generative AI was incentivized during its build. If it guessed, it was more likely to get a good result than if it refused to answer. So imagine, you're in grade school and you're filling out bubbles on one of those multiple choice questions. Getting it wrong, if you guess a third of the time versus don't answer at all, you actually perform better, and that's how the models were behaving. And so we were wondering, was the model making things up because it was biased towards responding, even when we told it not to? In our case, what we found is that the AI wasn't inventing anything. It was actually just doing something different than the staff was doing. It was because the humans were leaving out details that they deemed unnecessary because they had clinical judgment. Our system does not have expert clinical judgment. So we kept encouraging the AI to report on all sections of these chart reviews and then to explicitly say, there is no evidence to support blah statement. And so we were very deliberate. We got a lot of fluff out of this, meaning that the AI was over communicating. An as needed drug that was never taken, the AI will report it. The human decides that that's not relevant or when that's not relevant to the chart review. So this was a moment when we actually stepped back and said, what is our definition of good? Is good, again, the way that we are doing things today, or is good perhaps a new view of how we want things to look? So let's talk about what good looks like. You asked ahead of this, what are some of the best ways or best practices for ongoing monitoring of a deployed AI product? So I want to cover some basics. These are more technical concepts that are going to be in the top half of this slide. So one thing is something called drift. Drift is asking, is that thing that I am expected consistent over time? The way that this is done is typically looking for either a pure metric similarity if you're working on a classical machine learning model, like a score. Is my score, if I expect it to be 93, is it kind of within a plus minus 2 of that over time? With language models, we look for something called semantic similarity. A good semantically similar statement might be half dozen, 6. Those are semantically similar, and there's actually very nice metrics for calculating that. So we look for that semantic similarity when I have a known input and an expected output. So I run that regularly, and I can also run it when I do things like change my model or change my request gently to see how semantically similar my expected outputs are. So using that last slide, I can actually clean that from PHI and then use that as my expected input and output. There's also 3 metrics here that are very specific to generative AI when you use source material. This is coherence, groundedness, and relevance. This is used when you are asking typically AI to judge other AI, which is my favorite meta-analysis in healthcare or in technology. So what do these do? Coherence roughly asks, is your response making sense? Groundedness asks, can I trace my response to a known source? So if I had something in the last slide, everything the AI was doing was grounded. It was referenceable in that source chart. And then third would be our relevance. You can say a lot of things that make sense and source from that core material, but is it actually relevant to the task at hand? Bias. This one is something we've spoken about quite a bit in the Health AI partnership. If I tweak my inputs, does the response change in undesirable ways? There can be desirable bias, undesirable bias, but the reality is that AI inherited human biases. This one is a really important question that we've talked about as part of the Health AI vendor evaluation framework, and that is published on the Health AI partnership page. Ask your vendors about this just as much as you ask your own teams about this. And then similarly, red teaming and penetration testing, if you ask your system or solution to do things that it shouldn't, can you successfully achieve those goals? And there's lots of interesting ways to do that. You ask it to role play, you break down a malicious attack in smaller parts, and then you insert them in. etc. But also ahead of this session, you asked what kinds of roles and responsibilities or policies and procedures need to be documented as a condition for go live of your AI product. So let's dig into that as well. Most notably, we spoke already today many times about how important process mapping and redesign is to AI transformation. I'll dig into this in the next slide as well. But while you're here, so we're under the program necessities header now. It's time to update your policies and procedures. You need to ensure that all staff are educated on responsible AI and its hazards. Ask how often you want to be doing that. Personally, I think at least twice annually feels appropriate right now because technology is changing so fast and regulation is really struggling to keep up. There's limited federal regulation, and so you're going to look to your state partners at pushing some of these agendas. You're also going to need new technical content authors or trainers. Orchestrate those under an AI program or project manager. And again, I want to emphasize, work with what you've got. You have your SMEs, you probably have AI super users in-house. Find and recruit them to your causes of AI transformation. I do think that the most likely new place for, the place for new roles is going to be in this AI or model operations. All those strange metrics that I talked about a few minutes ago, you need people who are uniquely skilled at tracking them. So that would fall under monitoring and observability, language model testing, and setting up all of those automated test cases for you. So from here, I want to talk about another opportunity. And this is kind of that same question of what are some best practices for the ongoing monitoring of a deployed AI product? So if you have followed in Donabedian's mind share of how we think about quality measurement in healthcare, you want to look at an outcome measure. You don't want to look at the process. That's going to be easy, but that won't really tell you whether you're changing anything for your stakeholders. So let's put aside some of the AI and LLM ops, the stuff that we talked about in the last slide. Your leadership is likely to ask you for a return on investment from AI, your ROI. And I don't think that there's a straight path to this. You can play games where you talk about how time saved accrued up to some meaningful dollar figure. But I don't actually think that that's a winning endeavor. The statement that you want to make is that you can do more work with the same headcount. All right. Question in the chat I will come back to. So let's talk about the risk of this particular metric, doing the same work or more work with the same headcount. So with one project that my team is engaged in, we were really excited to reduce pre-call planning time for case managers. We built this member context. It's a unified view of data across many systems, and we put a narrative around it so we can understand the member's needs, the member's priorities, historic relationship information, and we are thrilled. The stakeholders are thrilled. It's going to save so much time. It used to take up to 2 hours to really thoroughly wrap your head around a particular case so that you could, again, respect the needs of this member while being contextually aware of what was happening to them to date. But take this to the extreme. And with AI, you have to take everything to the extreme. What if we were to make prep time even a minute? We could take on more members than the case manager could actually handle in a realistic panel. So there's process improvement that needs to happen downstream. But we also need to think about what happens upstream. So we still make a lot of cold calls. So we call members because we want to engage them in a case management program, but we actually only reach them about 30% of the time. So now what's happened is we've created these two conflicting problems that if we took one sort of node in this end-to-end process of identifying, engaging, and recruiting members into a case management program, if we make that very successful, we now have these other problems. Number one, we're going to prep for a bunch of conversations that won't happen, which is frankly cognitive overload for your staff. But then number two is we might wind up being overwhelmingly successful and recruiting a lot more members into programs than we are frankly staffed to support. And so really, really think about what growth looks like when you attach AI, because you need to be very thoughtful and bring in that whole problem thinking. If you focus on just the technical solution for one spot, you may not realize that the larger system falls out of balance. And so this, I think, is where we, in Jonah Bedian's model, would have talked about balancing measures. If I have reduced the time to prepare for a case, perhaps caseload or case throughput is now the metric that is going to get thrown into imbalance. And so if you take even one lesson away from today, think about problems that are far bigger than what you've been asked to tackle. So with that in mind, I do want to move over to Q&A because a lot of excellent questions have come through the chat. So I'll just jump right into them. The first is, how might AI engage seniors who have physical and age-related medical and cognitive challenges? One thing to be very cognizant of is that while AI is great at adapting to the different needs of different participants or stakeholders, it is not a panacea, it is not a universal solution. So this is where being contextually aware is so crucial, and using the knowledge that you have either explicitly or implicitly gained from conversations with your members, with your seniors, with your patients is really paramount. When someone interacts with SCAN in its various capacities, they are placing a trust relationship on us. If they express a disinterest in interacting with technology, we must respect that in every modality possible. If we did look at something like, can we use a voice agent as a first caller to certain individuals to schedule that human first contact for case management, we might decide that that doesn't apply to seniors who have already expressed medical or cognitive challenges to us, and we will respect that. So AI itself doesn't always directly engage with the seniors, but every program using AI should be very contextually aware of limitations, preferences, and values of your senior or member or patient. Further conversations, the learning gap or technical skills related to AI. I actually think that AI, in its best experience, is not something that you are actively interacting with, thinking that it's AI. One example I often use is Ring. Ring cameras have the ability to push a notification to you that says there is a delivery worker walking up the path. That we don't think of as being traditional AI. It is merely annotating what it sees in the image on your security camera. You're not chatting with it. You're not asking it a question. It is simply making the thing that you are going to do feel a lot more natural and easy. And so with some of these patient or member-facing experiences, don't think of pushing AI as a text box where they're going to ask a question. It might simply be a wrapper around information that you were already going to show them that might say, bottom line up front. And it might tweak based on their previously stated conversation preferences. Further questions? Okay. What would be needed for staff to be educated to work with AI and learn how to train AI to meet their organizational needs? The secret of AI is you. It's you in this workforce right now. So what do you need to educate your staff? We tried doing this grassroots. So the way that we ran education at SCAN was every other week office hours, and it still runs to this day. 9 a.m., pile in, join us. We're going to talk about emerging topics in AI. We're going to talk about, language models, voice models, etc. This requests that people join you, but I think we are very quickly moving to a world where we now have to tell. And I've seen this work very successfully when mid-tier leaders just expect this culturally in their team. So this might be that when you have a team meeting, you go round robin and you ask, how has technology or AI served you well this week? Where did it let you down? Make this conversational, make it interactive, make it part of the team culture to think about technology and particularly AI and where it might meet their needs. It might even be, was there a problem that you overcame this week? How did or did not technology play a role? How do you think we could address that moving forward? And then do set those department goals to take these training courses. A lot of them are online free. They are generally pushing the agenda of a particular vendor. So you can get Anthropic, you can get OpenAI, you can get Microsoft, you can get Google training. They're all excellent. I personally think that the Anthropic Academy is a very, there's a whole section there that is not vendor specific and is very much just about the appreciation and the absorption of larger knowledge around AI that I think would be very well served in the healthcare community. I think overall too, demos and exposure of the art of the possible can also be quite invigorating. This might be setting aside time to play with public tools without your real data. So, let people sign up for Claude, let them sign up for 11 Labs, let them generate voices, videos, images, just to sort of inspire that creativity. This is why hackathons can be so successful. You're just getting people to play and to learn. Any other questions?
Feel free to put additional questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we will call on you to unmute now.
One thing that I teased as a topic, but wanted to give space for some of those lessons, was around interoperability and emerging standards. And I think these are really crucial to talk about, especially as you develop your organizations. I think that we have fallen into this trap that I am talking to a model that knows nothing about the real world, that has some sort of timestamp of knowledge on it. A couple things that have really changed in the last few months are the AI's ability to use tools, and it is up to your discretion to decide how it uses those tools, and the AI's ability to use knowledge. So when we think about rolling out AI in any organization, two things that you want to think about and really nail. Number one is, what systems could your AI access if you so desired? This would be working with your information technology or IT organization to build out a view of what they would call their APIs. APIs are sort of like the rules of the road for interacting with system X. So if you wanted to go work with your case management system, such as getting status on a case, or posting a note to a case, or pushing to your electronic medical record, you will be using those APIs. So know what systems you can access. And then that level of knowledge is vastly underappreciated. Most knowledge stores in a rather mature organization, they're going to be landfills. It's the 5 versions of a presentation that you saved as 5 separate files. It's the ideas for programs that never went real. It's the documents that no one wants to get rid of, but they sit in your archive and they are 10 years old. When you start to bring AI to the table, you have to be very deliberate about the knowledge that you expose to your AI. So you take that general body of knowledge and then you attach the newer source that you consider to be authoritative. So you will need to make an ongoing effort to groom that knowledge and make it available to your AI systems. Because then from here, the 2 emerging standards that have begun over the last year-ish, one is called the Model Context Protocol, and this is how we get the AI access to that knowledge and to those tools. And so you should have sort of one unified place that, or one destination that may be multiple pillars inside, that if you have an agent that you're building in UiPath, in Microsoft, in Salesforce, in Google, it doesn't matter where you build your agent. If you have curated this special MCP server or sets of servers, they can all share in common tools and knowledge once they are privileged to do so. And that's one standard to keep an eye on, because it is roughly equivalent to the way we've pursued standards in healthcare for meaningful use. Another one is called agent to agent, or A2A. This is a standard that allows agents or AI systems to interact with each other. And this might be systems that live in vastly different places in your ecosystem, or systems that simply work together to fulfill a common goal. This is closer to interoperability regulations in healthcare, and I love trying to find these corollaries. Solid question in the chat. Expand on the art of the possible and the workshop idea that you have. So the art of the possible, are you referring to potentially the hackathon where you kind of get hands-on public tools and then, yeah. So this is, bring your personal computer day. You can do this if your organization has appropriate tools now, but you bring people together and in the course of an afternoon, you might explore new technologies. So you can get trial credits on public systems if you're using your personal machines. You might, like if you just have Office 365 Copilot, that one's easy to roll out in most enterprises. You get people together and you have an agent build-a-thon. Inside of Teams, you can build custom agents, you hook them up to bodies of knowledge, you give them behaviors, you experiment, you iterate, and then you see what you can create. The workshop is also kind of going in with a blank slate. I've oftentimes used crutches in running these, like I've asked, what do you hate about your job? What are you least proud of in the things that your organization does? And a good leader will be frank and honest about what that looks like. And then ask them, what could we be doing differently? And again, make that agnostic of technology. So these are two very different ways to engage your stakeholders. One is very much start with the technology and play around because people need to know what's possible. I think when we first started in 2023 and we'd go to different departments and say, what do you think you could be doing differently? They could not even appreciate what AI could or would be doing for them. And frankly, we didn't know either. So once they experiment a little bit, they come to understand what that looks like. Communities and learning hubs for staying engaged and inspired as a leader. I can plug some podcasts and newsletters, but I will say these are not healthcare specific, and I think it's better that way because I like to see what's going on in other industries. What might be dominating customer service is actually very applicable because healthcare is a service industry. What might be dominating logistics could be very important because supply chain plays a large role in health systems that operate clinics and hospitals, et cetera. Personally, for AI, there's one called the Neuron. It's full of memes, market updates, and increasingly case studies. Lenny's podcast was originally intended for product leaders, but has very quickly moved into AI. And therefore, you'll hear a lot of stories about bringing AI and AI culture into your organization and thinking more like builders. Great question in the chat. What does it mean to have AI acumen as a non-technical leader? I'm so excited to answer this question, actually, because I think it goes into some of those themes from Lenny's newsletter and Lenny's podcast. Everyone can now be more technical than they ever thought possible. During the Super Bowl, I sat with an AI coding tool and I built out an entire product simply by having a conversation with it. You do not need to be technical. Being technical is not a moat anymore. And I think this is an incredible opportunity for those who work in underserved spaces, for those who work in the safety net. Understand the breadth of what is there. You do not need to go technically deep. Where you need to be deep is to understand your risk and your responsibility as a user of these technologies, because it is now easy to build something that is doing the wrong thing, but you built it well. And so this is where I keep talking about zooming out, thinking about the impact of your work, because you can frankly build much of anything. Anyone right now can go build something using tools that will only take your credit card that can blast out phone calls to a bunch of people. But you have to be very deliberate and thoughtful about how you use that power now. And so I actually think that being non-technical is an important viewpoint on this ability to build this Cambrian explosion of new applications and plugins and full end-to-end solutions. Because you also now need to figure out, well, what does this mean for the way that we do work? Am I building out 1,001 straws that will break the camel's back? Am I building out things that are cohesive, or did I just smash out a solution because it felt good? Questions that I can ask. Ooh, so many good questions. Now we're getting into the existential things. AI questions a leader that can ask their team and the tools they're using for my solution. Absolutely. Just have them walk you through their life cycle. Nothing is simply built out in an afternoon. That's your prototype. That's your experiment. That is not what you are going to put out into the real world. So you need to start asking, once we start to get these prototypes out the door, what does it look like to a developer might say like harden it? What does it look like to get this ready to serve at scale? How have you assessed that? What kind of testing and evaluation have you done? And this is where there's, again, that red teaming as prior art. And how have you prepared for failure? What happens if it fails? Do we fall back on other work? Question is, will there be a loss of human expression with AI dominating work? The mindset that SCAN has is that this actually reintroduces the human expression that we frankly lost because we lost ourselves in certain types of work that was not value add to the stakeholders that mattered the most. A case manager retyping documents, a case manager making cold calls, that's not the spirit of the work. But getting that one-on-one time with the senior that is well-intentioned, that doesn't forget the things that might have been mentioned offhand 6 months ago is frankly very humanizing. And I find that to be very exciting about the future of work. I think that it is up to groups like this, the Health AI Partnership, to make some decisions about your areas of go and no go. You can decide to put everything on autopilot if that is the type of organization that you work with. But you need to decide where do we want to say is maybe a space that will be uniquely human moving forward? Where is the space that had become inhumane enough that maybe that is the space that we want to leave the technology in? I think that, yeah, it really depends on the type of problem that you're trying to solve, whether AI is the right solution. But I hope I emphasized many times in today's conversation, AI is not always the solution. AI is a tool in your tool belt, and AI works best when your solution is not just AI. Any other questions? These are such great opportunities for engagement. Okay. Is patient engagement improving when we add AI? So under the SCAN group header, there are numerous care delivery organizations that have deployed ambient dictation. And so I'll use that as one example. Ambient dictation has sort of gone ebbs and flows of this is the best thing ever. This didn't really change it. Oh, but it's amazing. Oh, but I'm not sure. Over the last few months. And the way that we've talked about quantifying impact is, number one, there's been very good data showing that overstimulation is reduced and burnout is reduced in physicians, even if time isn't actually saved, which I find to be a very interesting finding. But with the institutional special needs plan at SCAN, their finding was, I think, a little more interesting, because I think it shows that that engagement actually did improve. So this isn't going to be a scenario where we talk about improved coding. This is a comprehensive, residence-based primary care practice. So they're going to be pretty comprehensive already in their documentation. But what they found is that their admits per 1,000 went down. And it was because they were spending more time building relationships with these seniors and with the residential communities that they were living in, so that whenever there was a concern, the first call was to the primary care physician, because they weren't trying to scratch down notes on the side of the paper during their visit. They weren't trying to type things into their medical record during the visit. They gave their full attention and whole selves to those visits, to interacting with the senior, to meeting the staff and spending a little more time on site with the staff instead of huddling someplace to take down their notes. And so we found that admits per 1,000 and that notification of change in condition, those stats both improved in very meaningful ways. And those are very tangible outcomes. So if there's been any sort of degradation in day over day activity or behavior with that senior, again, the call is going right to the physician. And we believe that to be a really meaningful engagement metric that we've been tracking.
Okay, I think that is all the time that we have for questions today. But thank you all again for joining us. Thank you to Corinne for a fantastic presentation, and to our audience for great questions. Um, I am going to ask that you fill out this brief survey. It should not take more than 5 minutes, but we would love your feedback on today's session and hear about any other topics that you all are interested in exploring in future events. So thank you all so much for joining, and thank you, Corinne, for a fantastic presentation.